It's really a joy for me to introduce. This is the third group of students I've brought to see you. And we come back for a very good reason. And the reason is that we love you and we love what you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
And I think last time we asked if you had any opening remarks of things that you wanted to say, or whether you just prefer to go to questions. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm. I'll say a few words.
Okay.
Yes. And I definitely want to thank you all for taking the trouble of coming all the way here to see what the Tibetans are doing. Because it seems in many ways we are being forgotten. And I want you all, because of the subjects that you have chosen, it gave me a lot of hope for the humanity. And when I say that, Tibet is very much in there. So therefore, I thank you for coming all the way here to see what this little group of 100,000 people or a little more are doing here. So I thank you for that. And I also would like to request that we have monasteries, we have so-called offices and settlements and so that, but please don't feel or don't think that we came here to settle here. We came here and we tried to preserve our identity, our culture, our language, and we came here with hope of going back to a free Tibet. So therefore, to go back, we had to live. We couldn't just think about the past and cry, nor do nothing about the future. So we chose to do what we are doing now here. And many people think that we're very happy here, we're happily settled, and so what's the problem? Yes, the biggest problem is we don't have a country of our own, and we really want our own people, the future generation, to be free in their own country as free citizens of their own country and have a life of their own. So this I would like you to keep in mind. Who knows, in the future, one of you will become the president of America, and at that time, I would like you to remember that. And then, I'm also deeply impressed with the choice of the subjects that you have taken, and I think it's really wonderful that you have chosen these subjects to discuss and to think about, and eventually, these are the ones that really are going to make us happy. So I think before that, if you have, as young people, energetic, inspirational, if you have chosen such subjects, I think we have a better future for the world. And I'm really deeply impressed by your professors and members of the entourage that they were insightful enough to bring you here and to show you something that many people may not see it. And I am very inspired by your visit because of the fact that we feel that we still have something to offer to the world. How we are here today is also because of people's kindness. How we've been able to educate our children to the level we've done till now, although not perfect. It's because of the kindness of people. And the other thing is, it also is very good for our people, our younger generation, to realize that people from America, young generation from America, to come here to hear what His Holiness says, and they believe in that and they find value in that. Because, again, thanks to television, everybody's seeing the other world brighter, better than your own world. So our young people also are always thinking about the West being the best. And you go to the West, everything is perfect, everything is good. So that way, it's very good for the young people to see you, very wonderful young people, to come here and see what we have. So therefore, I thank you for all of these reasons for coming here. And then the other note I would like to say is, having lived in exile as a refugee person and in a refugee community, you go through a lot of sad times, a lot of disappointing times, but if you learn to look at the positive side of everything, there's always something good in there. We have a chance, we have the opportunity to create a future nation with all the positive parts of different governments in the world. Because there are so-called democratic governments, this and that, but not any one of them are perfect. So I always joke with my friends and say, maybe this is a chance to really pick the best of everything and make a Tibet, which is little different from the rest of the world, you know. So that way, we've learned so much about the world. You know, what I want to share with you as young people is in life, we face with all kinds of problems and good times, but it's good to not to lose your hope, and most importantly, to choose the right path. I think if you choose the right path and struggle on it, within that there might be struggles, but somehow you get to the top of it. And then we emphasize a lot on the environment that you grow up. So we say the environment really shapes you. As we all say, the Tibetans emphasize a lot on the environment. So I think that makes a lot of difference, because that again tells us what kind of company you keep, what kind of places you go, what kind of things you get interested in. All these shape you. So I think therefore it's very important for all of us to really choose the way of life, or choose the way of your thinking in a way that eventually, when you're in your 70s and 80s, you can think back and say, maybe I haven't done much, but what I did was right. You know, that's the most important thing. Otherwise, when you're 80s and 90s, you could have hundreds of different things that the world wish for, and 10, 20, even 50 houses, 100 cars, but yet your inner side is empty. So that's no good. But then I'm not saying you should go without all of this. That's also not possible. One should have enough so that you are comfortable, but not beyond that. Otherwise, that wastes a lot of your time. So then time doesn't wait for anybody, it just goes. So therefore, I'm saying all of this through my own experience, because all said and done, I think I made a lot of compromises in life, but I think I also made a number of right choices. So today, I'm 66, and when I think back, I can say that I lived a useful exile member's life. So I think this is very important. Okay, this is all I want to leave with you. Then on top of that, if you want to ask any questions, I can answer related to the nuns or anything else that I know I'll be very happy to answer. Yes.
My name is Joseph, and I'd first like to just thank you for giving your time to us. It means a lot. And we were wondering, what personal experiences most shaped your ethical development as a young person?
You know, I feel that where you grow up, like your parents, your home, that makes a lot of difference. And as a child, you often think about, I shouldn't be doing this because my parents will be cross. So we do it more not to cross them, rather than knowing what you're really doing or not doing. So I think my parents made a lot of difference in the way of my thinking about the ethical values. But then, as I grew up, I started understanding them. Because I think it's one thing to know what are ethical values, but the other thing is to really feel it and to understand it. So the feeling and understanding came into my life more and more as I started living, and then also hearing people like His Holiness and other teachers, and then really thinking about it and say, you know, how should I give an example? You know, like anger. Everybody says anger is not good. But then we all know anger is not good, but then you have to know why is it not good. And so when I came to understand the value of not being angry was, anger is not part of human nature. It's only the emotions that come and go as a human being. It's part of that and not our true nature. Therefore, you're not comfortable with it. If you're angry with somebody, you have said a harsh word, maybe you felt good at that time. I could, slap that person and say that, and she had nothing back to say. I felt very good. But when you really go to sleep with that thought, you're not comfortable. So that sort of things made me feel that true human nature is really that anger, greed, all these are not part of human nature. Therefore, it's better not to do that, and you will be much more at peace. And it's so much more comfortable to be at peace than having to think about it, isn't it? So, to answer your question, I think the environment, the teachers and my parents, and my own little bit of thinking. I think it's important to think and analyze rather than rebel or accept. Because there are two ways which are very popular with young people. There's either you accept or you rebel. Both are not very good unless you analyze, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Vivian, and we would like to know from your perspective what you think are the most important aspects of an effective ethical education.
Effective ethical education. The most effective is examples, I think. Those who talk ethical subjects, they have to be an example, living example. And then through living example, you can convince the people, and that can become more productive. I think examples are very important. It's very often we can talk, but when it comes to doing it, it's very difficult. Even those who talk, I think it's very difficult for them to also do it. Yeah.
My name is Daniel, and I'd like to know, are ethics something that will arise naturally, or must they be nurtured in an individual?
I think it's both. It's both. It's in us, we have to talk about it. For that to be more strong and living, you have to nurture it. So it's both, I think. Both. Unless you nurture it, it won't be there long. So nurturing is very, very important, yes. And through education, I think you become to know more or less what are the ethical things that we talk about. And only by living and nurturing it can we make it living. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sonika, and we were wondering if you could talk a little bit about the current state of the Nuns Project.
Okay, the current state of the Nuns Project. To go back a little bit, for those who may not have heard about this project at all, this project started way back in 1984, in principle, in theory. And this started when the Tibetan Women's Association came into being, and the women in the Tibetan community started being very active and recognizing their own strength and quality and putting it together and make it more positive to do something for the community. And that was the time when the nuns also came into picture and said, we have to do something about the nun situation as well. Because back in Tibet, for the last many thousands of years, there were monks. The monks were being educated and given the most profound system of education, which is why we have today what we have about the ethics, and everything boils down to what they studied. Whereas the nuns, poor girls, they just wore the robes, shaved their heads, and stayed in very beautiful nunneries in Tibet, supported by their own families. They didn't have to worry about anything else. But the point is, they never had any system of education for them. Therefore, today you do not see a single nun who's really got the degree to say, I'm a geshe, which is the very highest degree in the monastic education. So we felt, through the encouragement of His Holiness, the girls should be educated just as much as the boys, and the nuns should be educated just as much as the monks. So from those days, we started working for them, and but very slowly. But in the late 80s, we had another influx of nuns from Tibet who were imprisoned for going on demonstration against the Chinese government, and they were imprisoned, and as a result their nunneries were shut down, and so they fled and they came to India. And again, the other difference is there were nunneries in India also at that time, 1 or 2, and when the nuns came, they could not accommodate anymore because their nunneries were so small, so poor, whereas the monks, when they came from Tibet, be it hundreds or whatever, they could easily go into their own monasteries, which were very well set up. So we saw this unfortunate inequality in every way. But I must tell you that we did not have to actually go on demonstration or fight for the equality. This was given by His Holiness, and he said the nuns should also study, because if they are nuns, they must study, they must know what they're doing. So then we really got into helping them set up an infrastructure, set up the system of education. So we've been doing that for the last 20 plus years. Now, to study and go on studying, we had no problem because we had the most wonderful teachers from the South, and they were really good teachers, I must say. And then none of them ever said, you're a nun, this much is enough for you. You don't have to learn more than that. Nobody ever said. I say this with full confidence because I was looking for somebody to say that. So I was very comfortable with that. Anyway, we never could really get to a point where how would we do the exams, if that is possible. There was a lot of talk. The nuns never had this in Tibet, so how will they do it? Will they be able to do it? All these questions. So my personal way of handling this was let the community talk. But what you do is study. What we do is give you the opportunity, facilities, good teachers, and we just go studying. The numbers of years that are required, the number of subjects that are required, you study. And you don't have to go on saying, why not? Because it's no use. You're not ready, and if you're going to go on saying, why not? It's just waste of words. In the process, you might create a lot of enemies in the community and destroy the harmony of the community, which is very important. So we went on and on and on, giving them education. And finally, last year, His Holiness said, now the nuns are ready. It looks like they're ready, so why not let them also do the exams and give them the equal degree. So we got the permission last year, and now we are all set for them to do the highest degree exams. And once this is done and given to them, then they can handle all the administrative issues, and they can run their own nunneries, and they can, they'll be very well empowered then. And so this is the biggest change. The biggest, what do you say? Fruit of the whole 20 plus years of working. And then in the process, it wasn't that easy. Just to give you a little bit of idea, in late 80s, when the nuns came here, there was no place for them to live. The nunneries which were there, they could not take any more than what they had. So we had to build Domaling and another nunnery called Shoksep from the scratch. So we did that, and we've been able to do that, and along with that we've been able to set up this infrastructure and the curriculum. So everything came little by little, and of course we didn't have the money to build everything in a year or two. So what we did was, firstly they lived in a tent, half tent and half house, because we couldn't rent a big house because it was too much money. So we pitched a tent half and half house. So that's how we started. And then we started building here. We were able to, we planned the whole thing, but we built block by block. And just to give you an example, when we built one block, we shifted those girls who were living in the tent. And then we had 3-decker beds. Usually it's double-decker. So we had 3-decker beds. And each time another block was built, we would cut the beds and put it there, you know. So I think it'll be, you know, it's reality. So I would like to share this with you because nobody will, I don't think you will ever dream of anything like that. So that's how we began, and that's how we were able to do. Then for a long time, we had the bathrooms, but we didn't have the facility to give them hot water. So, and their health was very poor because many of them had gone to prison, and when they came here, they had damaged kidneys and damaged toes and fingers because they were frostbitten on the way from Tibet, and damaged kidneys because they were kicked by the prison guards in the prison. So we had to deal with those kind of health problems plus mental trauma. So along with that, to have a class was really something. And then class of what? The age difference was 13 to 44. So how do you start a class like that? So anyway, just to give an idea, we really struggled, and within about 2-3 years, we were able to put them in different groups, and their health also improved. And then slowly we were able to set up a solar bathing place. You know, from solar energy, the water gets heated, and that, you know, bathing system improved their health so much. So it was very, very educative and also very encouraging for me to see all these things. But then when we had the solar bathing place, everybody really went and bathed, and they knew, you know, how good it is to have a hot shower and bathe more often. So these are very basic things for you all, but for us it was a big thing. And that's how we started. And then not only Tibetan, but we also teach them English, and English, Hindi, mathematics, all the other subjects as much as possible. But then as their subjects grew bigger, their own subject is so huge that we had to curtail other subjects. So one of them was Hindi, and mathematics we had to curtail. Now they have English and Tibetan only. So that's how they started. And it's amazing what education does to people. You know, when I see the nuns who were there at that time and now, even though the way they walk is different. So I'm so convinced that education is so important, no matter where you are, which parts of the world you are in, whether you are a refugee or not. Education really opens your mind. So that's what happened to the nuns. And anyway, to just stop there, so the nuns have come from there, and now they will do these exams, and this will be recognized by the government in exile, by the Tibetan institution, and they will be doctorates. So that's it. And then to study this subject, Tibetan language was very, very important, because all these subjects were taught by the Buddha himself, and this was firstly in Pali and Sanskrit. But the only living language that we have today, which really links to the Buddha's words very closely, is Tibetan. So, not only as a people of Tibet, but even as people who want to study the Dharma, Tibetan language has become very, very important. And of course, for us, this gives us the identity. This has given identity, sense of identity and belonging to our children, which is very, very important. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bryson. And it seems that you had a lot of faith that over time the monks and the nuns would achieve equal rights just through natural evolution. How do you see this faith translating in other aspects of Tibetan culture or issues that Tibet faces?
You know, honestly speaking, when I looked at the studies and the situation of the nuns, the sense of equality was not very important to me. What was important to me was the ability for the nuns to really understand what they were studying. Because if they understood what they were studying, and if they made it part of their lives, the sense of equality should not make any difference to them. Because then you're above all of it. You know, that's what the whole thing teaches you. This is not important, that's not important. You, me is not very important. what is important is human happiness and this and that. This is what they study. So of course, unless you give it to them, it becomes an issue of inequality because the boys have and the girls don't have. That's not fair. But once you are in there, then that factor should not play any more role in you. And you should really be able to look at the humanity as such, part of me, not that I'm a girl or I'm a boy. So therefore, I felt this education should give them the power to think that way. And it is possible if they really understand what they're studying and live what they study. Because very often we study something, but we don't live that. So I think as a very ordinary layperson who doesn't know anything about these subjects, but my belief in this, my faith in this particular subject being the best subject to be understood for humanity gave me the courage and the strength to really drive them into studies. And then also the other thing I really felt is very important is for them, when they say, it applies to the monks as well, but when the nuns say, I have become a nun, I'm a nun, they have to really understand that I'm a nun. What do I do as a nun? How do I think differently from the others? Otherwise, just shaving your head and wearing a nun's robe doesn't make you any special. And particularly, there are so many kind people all over the world, and the Tibetan nuns, they get very interested. Oh, you're a Tibetan nun. You should not use your nun's, nun's image to gain sympathy, because then you're wrong. You're doing a disservice to the whole order. But it's a wonderful path, and they should realize the value of this path and walk in that path sincerely, truthfully, and not to fool yourself nor anybody else. This is what I think is very important. And I keep telling this to the nuns, and in my own little way, I hope this will make some difference to some people, because when I look at the world by large, we have monastic systems all over the world, including Tibetan monastic system. And I think it's very important for them to be pure. Whoever in the monastic system has to be pure and has to live a life without fooling others, without fooling yourself, because we lay people are looking up at them, saying, we don't know, but you know, please teach us, please lead us. So therefore, I am very devoted to the nuns, their education, because I believe that this can make a difference. Yeah.
Do you think that the strategies you've used in working for equal opportunity for the nuns of the Tibetan tradition would be effective in creating change in the struggles for equality in other cultures?
Well, firstly, we have to really make it really equal in our own community. But I think, this even sense of equality, I'm basing my experience in my own culture. When you bring something new in, there are many people who accept it, there are many who don't. And those who don't have a good sound reason for it. So if we don't give up and go wisely forward, slowly those who don't have a sound reason will fade away. We must give our whole body, mind, and soul to that, and don't listen too much to what is not very pleasant to hear, because what you do is more important than what you say. So if somebody says something negative, don't let that bother you, just go on. And then when the schools came up first, there were not much of education in the free Tibet even long before we lost our country. The education was not so prevalent, nor was it equal. Okay? So what we did in exile was something very new. When His Holiness said, send the children to school and educate the boys and the girls as well, nobody had any hesitation. They just sent all the girls to school. And as a result, after 30, 40 years, we have girls as well as boys as equally educated. And then they took equal positions in different walks of life. And nobody raised an eyebrow to say, why is the girl running that? In fact, if the girl was doing well, they say, oh, they do well. So the important thing is we have to do well and forget about who you are. And that way we can go a long way. And I think the Tibetan community has come a long way in that way. Now your question is if that'll make a difference, to the other communities. It should, otherwise it'll be a shame, because we are trying something without anything, without our country, without any means. We are trying to go in the right path. And those who have their own countries, and very good countries, very prosperous countries, if they don't look into this, it'll be shame to them. So hopefully we'll remind them of certain corners where it's still not quite equal. Yeah. Whatever's not right, it may be there for a while, but it won't be everlasting. It won't last long. So I really hope what we are trying to do will make a difference to the other communities as well, if it need be. And we're doing it very sincerely. Like, for example, the Tibetan independence and the middle way. You heard about that? Many people say, what chance do they have if they had to fight? You know? So they're choosing the non-violence, the middle way. That's not the point. You know? Anybody can fight. You can go and kill people in Beijing. But will that solve any problem? So it's not the point of not having the, chance, but believing in something more meaningful, something deeper. Therefore, His Holiness chose the non-violence, and we are still struggling as the non-violence. Now, your question reminded me of this because all over the world there's so much of fighting, so much of unrest, so much of a killing. Is violence really the answer? So that way, if people think we are really trying to do something that is meaningful for the humanity, not just for the Tibetans. And I hope, apart from this gender equality, even this, our way of struggling for our cause, will make people think about it. Yes.
Hello, my name is Brooke, and we were wondering what unique or different qualities will women bring to the Tibetan monastic society once they have equal opportunities in terms of education.
What I would like to see is when the nuns get all the opportunities and all the education, I hope that they will set an example. Don't talk about the other things, whatever they're doing. Just do what is right. So let the people see this is how it should be. So I am sure that if there's a proper, serious way of carrying on this life, monastic life, and if we have many wonderful teachers who come and guide us, I think women will listen and really try their level best to go correctly. So that way, as I said, I believe more in example than anything. So this will become an example and say, oh, so this is how it should be. And that way it might make a difference to the others as well. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Amy. My question is, Charlotte Whitten said women have to work twice as hard and be twice as smart as men for half the credit. Do you think that nuns have to prove themselves more than monks in order to become equally respected in Tibetan Buddhist culture?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think now, if people work, people are educated, they can think, and then we are also not that submissive, are we? So I think, the nuns, I don't think they'll have to work harder, but they'll have to work very hard to live the Vinaya. Because if you try to live according to the Vinaya, it's a very hard work. So if they do that work hard, there's no way people will not recognize it. So the government in exile, His Holiness, everybody has been very, very supportive. Now this is something I think I need to also explain, which is His Holiness always said from the very beginning, 20, 30 years ago, he said, it'll be good for the nuns to study. It'll be good for the nuns also to have the highest ordination. Now the reason why the Tibetan tradition do not have the highest ordination for the women is that it never went to Tibet. You know, the ordination has to come directly from Buddha himself. So when Buddha gave ordination to the monks and nuns, it went to Sri Lanka, it went to China, it went to Korea, and it was in India, but it could never reach Tibet for some reason. Therefore, we do not have it in the Tibetan system. But then His Holiness also made very sure in the mid-80s that any Tibetan nun who wants to go and take it from another tradition, you're most welcome to go. He said he did not stop them from. But the point is, our nuns said, it'll be very nice to have it in our own tradition. So we would rather wait for that than go be in a hurry to take it from another. But then there were about 10, 12 Tibetan nuns who took from the Chinese tradition. They're already here. But after that, they never followed it up because they chose, the rest of them said, we would rather wait. Then His Holiness said, all right, in that case, we have to do a really deep research because I'm not the Buddha. I cannot give the ordination. I can only help you make it possible, if possible, but I cannot give. So then he made his religious department to do a research on this. And then every time he spoke about it, he's very, very supportive. Now, to cut it short, just last year, they put a committee of 8 or 10 people do research on this. So the research is still going on, which means the issue is not yet resolved. It's neither yes nor no. So I'm hoping that it'll be a yes somehow. And if it 100% says it's not possible in the Tibetan tradition, then the Tibetan nuns could go and get it from another tradition. And then it involves a lot of work because then you have to translate all the Vinaya, all the way of doing many things into Tibetan because we don't have that in Tibetan. So it's not a impossibility. It's a possibility that is still being explored, ideally speaking, in Tibetan tradition, if not in any other tradition. But my word to the nuns as of today is, you don't have that in theory. You don't have that ordination, so-called ordination. But if you know them, just think that you have it. You practice it. You live it. And who really cares whether you really have it or not? But then somebody who has it and does not live it, what's the use of having it? So I told them the same thing when they were studying. I said, don't worry, don't listen to people if they say, will you be able to do the exam or not? It's a long way. So you just go on studying. And here I keep saying, you be a good nun, you keep all the Vinayas intact, you live them, and one day the day might come and say, here you are, and that time you're ready. So that's my way of encouraging them, and I think this helps them whether you have the Vinaya or not. The important thing is you have to live the values, principles. So that you can do even without the ceremony, you know. We often think ceremony makes somebody something, but ceremony is just there to remind you of certain things, and ceremony itself doesn't really make you into anything. You know, somebody gives you the ordination and say, from today you have the highest ordination, you have this 100 and something or 300 and some points to live every day. And you, after the ceremony, if you forget the points, what's the use? Yeah. So, did you understand?
Yes.
What I said? Okay. If I leave anything out, please feel free to ask again. Okay? Yeah.
The other day, before we interviewed His Holiness, we visited the Tibetan Children's Village, and we asked the students if they had any questions they would like to ask His Holiness. And one of them came up with, since we live in an interdependent world, in order to survive, we sometimes have to commit acts of destruction. How can we come to terms with this conflict?
Sorry, would you explain that?
Okay, so the example he gave was like to survive. Sometimes we have to kill an animal to eat, right? And that, like, or when we have to build a building, you know, we have to chop down a tree or something. So how do we reconcile trying to practice nonviolence and then living in a world where everything is dependent on everything else?
Yeah, this is a very tough question because it all depends on your motivation. Your motivation has to be so pure to say that I'll destroy this because of this helping something else. But very often our motivation is not very clear, very pure. So if the motivation is not pure, you have no right to do that. There should be no self-interest whatsoever to do a big job like that. So I don't think it's allowed. I don't think you can permit yourself to do that, thinking that you're thinking about something bigger, you know? Yeah.
This is, I think, one of the reasons they picked Kunlung as one of the subjects from Ethics for the New Millennium.
Okay.
Because I think often we don't think about our really understand our own emotional motivations when we do things.
Yes.
And then we rationalize our behavior.
Right.
And then we create a lot of destruction.
That's right. That's
without
right.
even being aware.
Yes. But it's so wonderful that you young people are thinking about these subjects. I think it's really wonderful. Wonderful. So motivation, please, as far as I know.
We live in an interconnected world where suffering exists. Therefore, we are connected with the suffering of others. What should we take personal responsibility for? And what must we accept as out of our control?
Well, you're asking me such high questions. I don't think I am eligible to answer those because I haven't studied the Dharma and I can't claim that I know anything better than many of you. So, but still, to just try and respond to your thought. This is a very, very, very deep question. You know, suffering, according to the Buddhists, you have to end your own suffering, right? Because of suffering, you're in this cyclic existence. So to end the other person's suffering, you have to end your suffering first. So to end your suffering, you have to be really free of all the negativities in your thought. And try to live really your pure human nature. And the moment you are able to do that, then you are liberated yourself from the suffering. And then once you've done that, then you try to help others. Otherwise you can't, because we are in the depth of suffering ourselves. That's what I understand when the teachers teach. Okay? Yeah.
You talked about how when the nuns first came to you from Tibet, from the prison, that they suffered a lot from trauma and things like that. And I was wondering, how did you experience the Buddhist education helping the women regain their inner peace while dealing with that emotional trauma of the way they were treated in prison?
You know, what I really did is, I had no training of dealing with traumatized people. Otherwise, you have to go to a school and be trained as a psychologist or something like that. I had nothing of that. And, but all I had was sympathy for them, understanding for them, what they had been through. And then I just wanted to do what I could do for them, which is to tell them, you're safe here. Nobody's going to come and harm you now. So you're free now. And then also, you don't have to worry about your next meal. We're going to give it to you. So these are basic things that I could do for them. And then I realized that they sort of took me as a mother figure for them. Then I understood how important it is for them to have somebody to run to whenever they had a problem. So I told them, I can't do everything for you, but I'm always there for you. You come and tell me whatever you. So this gave them a lot of sense of peace and sense of belonging to somewhere, somebody. Then of course, above all, His Holiness is there, they know that. To the extent that, when they first lived in a place as a group, they didn't know how to cook as a group. They didn't know how to use many of the vegetables that we're using here, and I used to cook for them. And then when there was no water coming, they would come and tell me, there's no water coming. There's no this, there's no... They would come to me like my own children. So this made me feel very useful. And that's how we really carried on. And then whenever I met with a bigger problem, I would consult a friend of mine who know more about this. But then there are professionals who call themselves psychologists. There are professionals who deal with traumatized people. They're all wonderful. But I must say, the true love, true care that a human being can give to another, that's the key to everything. Unless that comes, nothing else will work. Nothing else will work so firmly. It works for a while. You give them a pill, it calms them down for a while, but once the effect is gone, it's come back again. Like that. So I'm saying, as an unprofessional, untrained, in many ways uneducated, here was me trying to do something for them. It made a lot of difference, so I'm very happy about that. And then, as I was going to tell you, in my home we have different members of the family. So that time they used to live very near my house because we rented an Indian home, which was 3,000 rupees per month, which was being paid by one of my friends who said, I can pay for 1 year. So I was relieved for 1 year. So they lived there. And then there was no water one day, and they would come and shout from the woods, call me. They would call me Amala, which is mother. Amala. And then my husband went out and said, yes, what can I do? Not you, we want our mother. So, this made me feel that I was making a difference in their feeling. So yeah, that's very important. Did I answer your question? Yeah, that made all the difference. Then later on we consulted professionals in those lines, and they also became helpful. And then above all, I realized that their sense of being near His Holiness was like pouring cold water in a boiling water. Okay? Then after that, they also needed that to be kept up. So His Holiness can't go and ask them, did you have your lunch today, or something like that. So somebody had to do that, and then I thought I took that place with many of my other friends. Yeah. So we consider true love and affection very, very important, and very, very important. And we also believe that women can give that. And we won't say the others can't. Yeah, we say mother's love is very, very precious, very, very pure. So mother's love in Buddhism is considered to be very high on the level. And I think as women, we should realize that we have that quality, and then don't let it go down or lessen it, increase it, and give it to the whole humanity. Only we can do that. Instead of sometimes fighting, you have that, why don't we have it? Because this sort of things it's not productive, I think it's really wonderful. In so many ways, women have suffered for the last many centuries, but now is the time for us to be proud to be a woman, because we have all these qualities in us. And then we've had all the education, exposure, so we don't need to be fighting anymore. We need to be proud, we need to be self-contained, empowered, and try to help others.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Karina, and we would love to know what advice you have for our generation.
Well, I think your generation is very, very important for the humanity. And you're receiving a lot of education. And I think for you to think about what can I do for humanity to make this world a better place for all of us is very, very important. And I think you can do that. You really can do that. I'm very impressed with your topics. If they chose it, it's really wonderful. And I don't know if the college chose and gave it to them. The topics they chose for the discussion,
No, these are their topics.
It's really
Yeah.
wonderful. So with all these kind of thoughts, there's no way you can go wrong. So keep it up with that. And I wish you all the best. Yeah.
I want to make an observation because when I listen to you speak, there's something about what you say, and there's something about the feeling that goes with what you say, which is grounded in experience, grounded in practice. And many times I hear you saying, and we also heard His Holiness say, about to really think on these things, to reason, to reflect as a way of internalizing them. And what I'm noticing in our conversations is a kind of a wisdom that emerges from that. And the wisdom is not to fight, but to choose the path that you walk on and walk on it through whatever difficulties. And so it's taking a longer view. It's based on faith rather than control. So that you have faith that in the long run, if I do the right thing, eventually some good will come of it.
Yes, yes.
And so there's a very unique intelligence operating. And the core of what I'm trying to bring into practice of education is discernment, the quality of being able to choose well. And I keep hearing that come up in the conversation with you.
Yes.
Is this ability to choose well.
Yes.
And for that, I'm very grateful to have that reflection from you because it's very important to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I thank you for putting me on this chair to talk about things that I really don't know. But whatever I said is through experience. But then I've heard the wonderful teachers, His Holiness, and your own life experience. So it's become a way of life rather than a degree or anything, whatever you call it. So therefore I feel comfortable talking about it because I speak from my heart. I don't study, I don't reflect on anything, I don't refer to anything, I just speak as I think. So if if you think it's good, I'm very happy to hear that. I'm really happy and inspired.
It inspires
Thank
me.
you. Thank you.
It inspires
Thank
me.
you.
So thank you so much. It's just such a gift.
You're most welcome. Thank
Yeah.
you. And then very often to make the right choice is not very easy. You know, it's always difficult to make the right choice. You have so many problems in making the right choice at the initial stage. That's why I think many people don't have the courage to make the right choice, because we take the shorter route always. But do not be hesitant to make the right choice, even if it may be difficult, because eventually that really opens up many things. And then to do things, don't wait, you know, like I did with the nuns. I had no financial backup, no knowledge to really deal out, but I thought this was to be dealt, and I just plunged into it, and then it worked. So I think part of it is your own intention, motivation, and courage. Courage is very important in such times. Even if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You did your best, you know, without any self-interest. Without any self-interest. Because very often I think we are very lost in your own, you know, gaining fame, name, monetary gain, all of this. And then so you're hesitant. If we don't have any of those motivations, there's no need for us not to do it. You know, just do it, and you do. If it works, fine. Even if it doesn't, you have nothing to lose. Yeah. learned that from the Nuns Project.
Yeah.
We really had
what a
nothing.
miracle. It came from nothing.
We really had nothing, you
Yeah.
know. My colleagues in the Tibetan Women's Office, they said to me, how could you take on this? Because we don't really have anything. So we have a very famous saying in Tibetan, if you live the Dharma well, the food will come up the hill. You know, truly. Nothing, usually things roll down, right? But if you live the Dharma well, they say it'll roll up. So I repeated this and I said, well, if we live the Dharma well, the support will roll up the hill. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
We just finished interviewing Rinchen Khando. She's an absolutely amazing person. One of the biggest things she kept talking about was teaching and learning through example. If you want to affect positive change in the world, it starts with yourself.
She created an opportunity for nuns to get the kind of education that they wanted, and she really proves that if you want to do something, there's a way to do it. You know, even if the task seems impossible, and it can be achieved by being kind and by hope and faith.
She really emphasized a kind of patience and integrity when we asked her about women's equality, about making change, about what taught ethics. She really talked about being a model, about not just saying the words, but to really represent those things that you say and believe.
Thank you. Thank you.